Yo,
All right.
welcome to bumoneyboard.com. It's a new platform. I know it might be confusing to some people, but this is the type of content that we're gonna be having on the platform. And today, it's an honor and a privilege to know uh Ausrifile Lerumo, who goes by her name, her calling name, Gogo Moyo. And I just thought I should have on this platform because she's been consistent for a long time. She's been doing this for more than 10 years, I believe, right? And
That's right.
and in my opinion, I think she's an expert when it comes to spirituality. So I just want to ask her a couple of questions about her calling. Her stories out there. I mean, if you don't know her, I'm not going to ask her the questions about how she started and all that, but I just want to ask her trending topics basically. And the first one is, there's people are saying that getting a calling these days, it's a trend, it's fashion, because we see a lot of people coming out and saying, yo, I have a calling, and I'm a Sangoma, and all that and all that and all that. Celebrities, are starting to come out also. So I want to know from you, Gogo Moyo. Ne? Okay, my bad, my bad. I didn't greet you because I greeted you when we started. How are you?
Good thing. Like I am watching to everyone that's tuning in. As he said, Gogo Moyo, and yeah, I've been a Sangoma for what, 14 years now?
That's a long time. And
Yeah.
you are fairly well known, so because of the work that you do. So, and also when you started, it wasn't popular. Now I feel like people understand now, right? But before we even get to that, is it a trend to be a Sangoma? Is it something that people are getting into because it looks cool?
Absolutely not. Unfortunately, it's not like a dance move that's trendy and all of a sudden we start picking up, on it. I think the thing that makes it seem as if it's trendy is the fact that accessibility of information is a lot more heightened than it was before. So as Gogo Moyo, I would put up a video explaining things like dreams, certain kinds of ancestors, or share a day in the life of. And they can see, this person is just like us. She can be in suburbia for lunch. She can be in Dumbeni in the morning. She can be at the river taking a client. She could be driving around doing a road trip, listening to the same type of music that we listen to. So, hey, man, there's relatability, So it's also about how we're currently showcasing the conversation around bungaka, traditional healing, and being an enlightened person, because it's not just limited to being a sangoma. There is so many different things to being a light worker. You could be a tarot card reader, you could be a clairvoyant, someone who just sees things, by virtue of being enlightened. So I think it's now the way it's being portrayed. There's no dirtiness associated with it. I remain as cool as the next person is because of how I choose to dress myself when I'm not working, like offset, And also another thing is, ingulo you cannot prescribe ingulo, because a lot of people end up going and heeding their callings because now they're starting to get sick. So how can ingulo be a fashionable and trendy conversation when it's one of the most uncomfortable things that you're ever faced by? So a lot of us now are coming out because firstly, we're sick from a very innate part of ourselves, where we are seeing that as much as energy pusha and all the different missions we want to push, but because our spirit is not well. We have a lot of disease within ourselves, and it forces us to go looking on the net because now it's more accessible. Now people are also starting YouTube channels wanting to conversate about it. Not all of them are going about it the right way in terms of how much they're willing to share and how much they shouldn't be sharing. But at the end of the day, the information is there. Just Google dreams and you'll find dreams about Mungaka or whatever the topic is. So literally Google has been our friend. Like the internet is our friend. And that's why it's easier now for people to feel like they can have these private lessons from Endlini and not have to move to the uncomfortable space of someone they don't know in this uncomfortable new world. And you don't know if this person you're going to see has a snake, or is their home clean. So it really has shifted accessibility, the knowledge being around, as well as the comfort level. So it's become a lot more convenient to learn about one's spiritual calling right now and heeding it and going through the different phases than it was before. I mean, for me to become a healer, when I was 19, I had never met a healer in my entire life. I've never lived locationing. When I have to visit family, and it's a limited period of time. So growing up in suburbia, I never got to see ngaka just normally, or maybe I was ignorant because I wasn't looking out for it, you know? So I spent that many years of my life without being exposed. But yeah, whatever. My brother and I would sulk every time, like, do we really have to? Do you know how early we have to wake up? But that was like from a juvenile perspective, from a, you know, from the fact that I've never seen this before. I don't even know the results. I'm just thinking, okay, guys, my parents are old. They've got their own unique, special way of wanting to bond. Let's go. You know, not really necessarily learning that there's a change that we're trying to enforce in our lives. There's a relationship that we're trying to build with our ancestors. And only then, when I really got sick and started having outer body experiences, was I pushed into this new unfamiliar world that says, mem, ungaka. And I'm like, whatever that means, but let's go, because being in my body right now, knowing what I know is uncomfortable. It's all of a sudden very unfamiliar. So I might as well go and explore what this thing is, because I can feel the force that it's calling me by. So how can all of that stuff that we can't control be seen as fashion?
It's very interesting. So obviously, you know, I saw a video online recently where there was a young girl, you know, scamming people using another healer's name, you know, a prominent healer's name. And it was, you know, and the healer found her, and, you know, it was a mess, but it was a young girl. So my question now is, obviously we see a rise of, you know, more and more young healers getting out there. Is there a way from, you know, your community, are there plans of formalizing it in a sense where people can now be in a position to kind of like, you know, just like, let's say if you go see a doctor, you know, there's like a qualification, you know, you can check on the website to say, okay, this is a qualified doctor, for instance. So what ways is your community growing into formalizing or, you know, keeping the, you know, the, how should I put it? Yeah, basically, like, you know, protecting the...
Regulating. Yeah.
Yes, regulating, basically, yeah.
So you see, the thing with that is it's so tricky, because firstly, it's like having a diverse ethnic group. It's difficult to tell the Zulu people, the Bedi people, the Xhosa people to formalize. Whereas just doing a menial task, we do it in so many different ways. So now, even when it comes to bungaka, superficially, it may look like it's the same thing, you know? Whereas only when you start paying attention to the detail, the beadwork, how they dress themselves, how they sing, how they dance, all those different things, even how do they divine? You start narrowing down and seeing that we're thinking, hang on, these people are not necessarily the same. So the thing is, we have these bodies that have existed for a very long time. And I don't know as far as them being able to identify that Batho Abatswane. So now you are setting a rule and a precedence for the entire body of healers and not putting into account that we're different. So obviously there's going to be certain groups that are going to say that won't qualify for us. We can't use that. If anything, it hinders our progress in us being our great selves. So it's very difficult, essentially, when it comes to that part. And then there comes a perspective where Mpande to Mpande, we already work as silos. You do your thing, I do my thing, start of my way, I start of your way. And we'll all flourish. So we have a lot of silos that exist because we don't believe in working the same thing. I could say a basic thing like taking someone for a river cleansing. There's so many ways of doing that one particular thing. And we're going to instill different practices towards that. It doesn't make mine more right or less wrong, you know? It just means that can I live differently? And then there's the perspective of, I was taught a particular way of how to do something when I was being initiated by my teacher. Then years later, my ancestors come to me and say, remember that thing that your Gobela taught you? Scrap that. This is how we want you to do that. Now I'm already going against what I'm shown from my teacher. I don't think that her teachings are any less invaluable. They've worked for me up until this time, even for my ancestors. But now I'm growing into a bigger entity. My energy is bigger than the space that I was raised in under your care. So now I must be free enough to explore and basically go into Super Saiyan mode without you feeling like I've left your teachings behind. Because that's where the crux of everything was. And then also the perspective of just generally being different people working with different things. It's going to be impossible, really, really difficult. Not that it shouldn't even be done, because it's so important to regulate. There's also another perspective where, as a Gobela, it's my duty to make sure that by the time I graduate children, I give them certification. I make them part of a body, that they be known that a person like this exists. That if I'm going to say, my child, here is your qualification, and here is also your pad where you can write sick notes for people. There's a practice number. There's an organization there. There's a contact number for people that you can be reported to, or more information can be found out about how eligible you are to be writing these notes. So it's so many different levels. Unfortunately, it's not even like an easy thing to answer. Myself, just a week ago, I'm going through YouTube and it says, check some of your videos. And while I'm there, I'm finding that someone has taken my video and downloaded it and re-uploaded it as their work. And I'm thinking, even on that level, it's unethical. So why wouldn't this young girl see an opportunity? Because if I'm a popular Sangoma and I run my practice a certain way, I won't always get to every single person that's sorting me out. It's impossible. By virtue of that, I'm a popular person. So when this person is seeing there's a market here, you know, that's also some of the things that we can only control when we start seeing them. But there's so many people I've seen who have taken out products with my name on it, with my face on it. I am not being compensated in any way. I was never spoken about in any way, but my name is literally changing and making a life for other people by virtue of me being who I am. So there's very little we can do. All we can do is literally police the situation on behalf of everyone, especially when you know that I don't sell products. Gogo, what's going on? I saw your new product. Like, what do you mean? I don't sell products. Well, according to everything you do. Example, I cannot, now I'm going to be responsible for the effects of what that particular product did for the person who used it. It's got my name on it, whether it's legal or not. So there's only so much that we can do about such things. I heard that you can graduate, I heard that there's people now having online courses of how to become a Sangoma. That is the most ridiculous thing I have ever heard. It's like saying, I can circumcise you on a YouTube video. That is impossible, because how do you administer healing to yourself? I can teach you practices, certain things that for you to go do when you're at home, but the bulk of everything, you have to be supervisioned. Like you have to have someone constantly keeping their eye on you, because I'm giving you certain imuti, saying, I want this to trigger you. I want this to spike any reaction out of you. So if I'm doing this online and I'm sending you stuff, who is responsible for your behavior and how you act out in that space that you're in? So there's a lot of craziness that's going around right now in the world when it comes to just in the namesake of, I want to make convenience, or I want to stop people from suffering. By the person whose hands you are in. It's not the whole body of Bongaka that is doing that.
Wow. And is it possible though to consult online? You know,
certainly.
YouTube? Oh, okay. So
not necessarily. Yeah, it is possible. I mean, like, I think the most craziest thing that happened is Ukobela, my first initial person whose hands I came across. She took a call one day, and like her cousin, like Teddy, calling me, yo, Gogo, what's good? I got a serious problem. Can you check this out for me? Like, oh, and I go check whatever it is casually, because we've built a relationship. And the cousin got the answers he needed, and it's like, yeah, I'm gonna check your messages. I've sent you money. Like, cool. I'm like, I look at her like, is that even possible? And she's like, yeah, I do it for my family all the time. And I'm thinking, boom, my mind is blown, because I'm also looking at it from a suburban perspective where I've got technology all around me. I deal with anxiety of being around people. I want to control my spaces as often as I can. And I'm thinking, oh my God, this woman is giving me the biggest solution ever. By the time I got to ukuthwasa and I came back home, it was one of the most biggest selling points about me and my practice is I provided so much convenience. And already by virtue of how I speak, I drew a different market in, a different audience. So these are like posh people feeling like, I'm not really sure I want to go to Ndumbeni, you know, kind of like have to dress a particular way. You know, like we're dealing with so many different kinds of people. So it was the most amazing thing because it literally opened up my entire world to people I would have never, ever met, and also who had never had that much exposure. Now, these are the people that are thriving many years later because we have these kind of conversations. And I didn't have to wait for pandemics to arise. If anything, during the pandemic was the most financially positive time I've ever had because I had a system already running. I wasn't still trying to find my footing. Systems were created. You find that people will pay long in advance because like, no, I'd rather book because I know how impossible it is to find you. And you're already working with so many things that are towards your advantage. So it's absolutely possible. I cannot, however, administer any kind of help beyond whatever I find on the internet. It needs physical presence.
And also like from a business point of view as well, you know, like people are already using your face to make products. What does that mean for you? Is that something that you are going to get into eventually to kind of like, you know, have your own products to sell because it's already happening, you know? So it's like, do you fight them and say, no, stop it? Or do you say, okay, cool, I'll create my own?
I think, first of all, flatter, what is it? What's that phrase where they say if someone copies you, it's like a form of flattery?
Imitation is the form of flattery.
Exactly. That's my perspective when I look at it. Much like when people are trying to make YouTube channels and then they're trying to speak like me and not trying to have their own essence of who they are and why they want to start the channel. So if anything, on a business perspective, all it's saying is like, Ma, why are you sleeping on yourself? You know, but that's the thing. To someone, it may seem like I'm sleeping on myself. And there's also my perspective of I didn't start this to have things coming out in pellet form and in like overdrive. That's not why I started, you know, and that's why I've actually been struggling with the transitioning to go into it on a more lucrative, serious-minded business front. But when I'm seeing these people around me do these things, like, hey, it's actually possible. So it's basically outgrowing the old version of how I've portrayed Gogo Moyo to be, to actually understanding that right now things are changing. And that's why you got to see the niche market of being able to be and introduce the first narrative, is because you realize that things are changing. So we can't stay stagnant. So in the future, I do foresee myself getting into these different things. I just don't want to be so typical. I'm bored of typical. You know, I really want to make impactful changes in people's lives. If I'm going to do that, let me send you a hamper that's going to say for the next how many months, if you subscribe to this, I'll send you a box of a selection of products. And while that happens, I have classes at a certain time in the week, and I'll tell you how to use them or help you watch your spirit grow as that happens. I'm more interested in the depths than just making the money, bruh, whatever.
Yeah, no, I understand you. You know, you can't just do it because, you know, you can. You need to make sure that you do it right. And it makes perfect sense for me. I hope, me as an entrepreneur, I'm like, yo, I hope you do it soon because it makes sense. You understand? It makes sense. You already have a clientele. It's like, obviously they're gonna need products. Like, you know, you do subscribe products, but it's just like, you know, not like, that's why I asked you the questions earlier on, like, how do you formalize this? Like, I would like to see in the future where we also have like pharmaceutical companies dedicated to, like, you know, our people and, you know, herbs and all that you can get, you know. But I believe we'll get there, and I believe it's people like you that will help us get there. My second last question to you is, you know, before traditional healers were old people. These days, we see that they're getting younger and younger, and you touched a bit on it earlier on. But I want to know, like, what happened, like, what made you know, Abu Gogo decide, like, yo, or our ancestors decide to go, like, yo, okay, let's invest in the youth.
You know, the thing is about a calling, it's very hereditary. It's very generational based. It doesn't just pop up and sit on you and say, you're the first, where you're being called up. No, this thing that is passed down from our generations for many years. And then depending on the kind of generation you're born in and the exposure to things that you have around you, what is seemed as allowed or possible, it's going to alter you participating in that particular calling that you have in your life. For instance, my grandmothers weren't healers, but before them, they were healers. I could see patterns of, this is a gifted person in my grandmother, but she was not willing to entertain it. Back in the day, there were acts created around, if we see you expressing yourself in any religious or spiritual context, we're going to lock you up. So they were stopped on a mental level, that I'm breaking the law by being my best self. And then my mother's generation came. I'm seeing these traits again in my mother. She wakes up telling me dreams. She tells me not to go visit that person. She tells me she doesn't like my friend. I'm thinking, Mom, hold up. Like, she's like a cool person, but she's reading her from a different kind of eye. Her energy is tapping into her on a different level. And now, years later, and you're realizing you are the youth and you have this calling, grand calling upon your life. And you're like, I've got so many generations of people that could have taken this, but they didn't. But you're not seeing their challenges, all the rebuilding that they had to do when their parents couldn't step into their greater selves. So it's like literally, you know, when politicians make up laws, they know what they're doing psychologically to the person. You know, they know there's a whole team around there, everyone dedicated to a different part of a person's well-being. There's someone who's adding and emphasizing to a certain point because they know if we say go outside, wear a mask, social distance, don't do that, we're tapping into the weakness of who they are. I mean, with COVID, they say, don't come into interaction with people, don't kiss, don't do that. All the different laws they put out initially in the beginning. Whereas a person is made up, the most fundamental need is for love and to be loved and to have like actual connection, skin to skin connection with the next person with you, a hug, a high five. It's the most paramount thing that a person needs. Now you're being told you can't do that. Already, depending on where you live on your own. Now your world becomes even much smaller. So by virtue of putting certain laws in play, they know what they're going to do to a person. So even when it comes to spirituality, it is no different, you know? So that's the kind of things that would make it seem as if the youth, if anything, this is the best time in your youthful state for you to get into a practice of sort, because you have the energy to run around and like follow the next lead. Make yourself a case, like investigate the things that move you. If it says go travel to certain spaces, go. You have the energy. You don't yet have kids. You're not tied down yet. You know, by the time you're forming the bonds that you're forming, you are actually making the right connections with the people that you're falling in love with. Choosing as friends, choosing as business partners, because your spirit is already starting to enlighten to a point where it's sending you into the right relationships. Now, if I say go do all of that, you're going to struggle because you're interacting with people based on how you see them and not how you see them. You know, there's a difference. And that's so important.
Wow. I'm just blown away by that response. You know, you always get me like this. So you get me in my thoughts. I'm like, oh, that's dope. Okay. So lastly, you know, because it's already 30 minutes. Can you believe it?
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to make it too long. I remember, I think I wrote an article back then, or I wrote a headline back then, and I said that you're a digital Sangoma, and I want to take credit for that because I was one of the first people to call you a digital. Okay, you called yourself that, but I put it out there. You know, you've got one of the biggest YouTube pages when it comes to, you know, people that do your work. What is next for you, for your career moving forward?
You know, Andile, that's one thing where I find myself like I'm actually in hermit mode right now. I've locked myself within myself right now, trying to figure that out. That's why I'm saying right now, nothing moves me, nothing excites me. Like I'm really doing the groundwork of trying to figure out what the people need. And that's what makes you successful, is solving for an existing problem, not solving for something that you feel is going to excite people, because there's no longevity in that. Because if something is already existing, you are damn sure of that response. So that's where I am. You know, I'm playing around in the candle business. I'm also seeing that's also quite a very popular, trendy thing. But anything I'm ever going to put out there, you must best believe there's a whole body of work and insight that is part and parcel of that. So I'll sell you a tangible product, but there's a world that I'm inviting you in. And that's what my selling point is, not this product that you can buy anyway. And I want to literally leverage the community that I have around me, which are millions of people, especially internationally. I find that I have such important conversations with people all over the world, and they're like, Gogo, my word, you've changed my life, and I've never met you, because they understand the value in packaging the actual conversation. Don't have the conversation just for the sake. Where are we going with this? What have you identified for you to feel you need to address it? You know, and that's where I'm at, Andy. I'm really in hectic hermit mode. All I know is when I'm out of here, y'all be ready, yo, and have my money, yo. Like, have my money, yo.
I think you figured out, and I think that, you know, you will solve a lot of problems that we have, you know. And I think you're already there, you know. I just can't wait for you to say, okay, cool, this is what I'm doing next. But I'm hoping to see, you know, your own TV show on like national TV. I'm hoping to see you on Netflix. I'm going to see you travel the world, you know, just do your thing, you know. But yeah, man, thank you so much for your time, Gogo Moyo, aka Refilo Lerumo. And I always appreciate Doctor. Oh, excuse, Doctor Refilo Lerumo. I really appreciate your time. And yeah, man, thank you so much. And good luck with your future projects.
Thank you so much. And also a very good congratulations to you for starting another platform where you get to express yourself. I think as people, if we niche ourselves and we label ourselves as a certain tag, we miss out on growth opportunities. So I'm always going to be commending of you. I've seen you go ups and downs, all the different platforms, and this is what it's creating today. So thank you so much also for evolving. You allow us, by virtue of seeing you, to allow ourselves to also evolve. Thank you to everyone that's tuning in, and I hope you subscribe to this new platform.
Danke.